Ukraine has urgent requirements in terms of more military aid, according to the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. He also reaffirmed that the United States and NATO allies in general were in Brussels to support Ukraine over the long haul. Defense ministers are meeting in Brussels over Ukraine as they discuss more weapons for the country. The first anniversary of the invasion is approaching, and Russia has intensified operations across a broad area of southern and eastern Ukraine, and a big new offensive has been widely anticipated. Before the meeting this morning, NATO's alliance's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Western countries need to boost ammunition supplies to Kyiv.
Together, this contact group has made it clear that we will support Ukraine's fight for freedom over the long haul and help Ukraine hold and advance during the spring counteroffensive. With unity and urgency, we will again deliver the support that we have promised to Ukraine. Ukraine has urgent requirements to help it meet this crucial moment in the course of the war. And President Zelensky underscored Ukraine's need for more equipment at our last meeting in Ramstein. So we're fortunate to be joined again by my good friend, Ukrainian Minister of Defense, Oleksiy Reznikov. And Oleksiy, thanks for your leadership and for joining us again today in person. The Kremlin is still betting that it can wait us out, but 1 year on, we are as united as ever. And that shared resolve will help sustain Ukraine's momentum in the crucial weeks ahead and help Ukraine travel the challenging road that lies beyond. And looking around this room today, I know that our unity will only grow. We all understand the stakes in Russia's war of choice. This isn't just about Ukraine's right to live in peace and security. It's also about the kind of world that our children will inherit. None of us want to live in a world where autocrats can assault their peaceful neighbors, trample their borders, and bombard their people. So we've come together to stand up for a world where rules matter, where sovereignty is respected, and where civilians are protected.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Just a few minutes ago, the NATO defense ministers' meeting ended in Brussels, and Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg addressed reporters after in a press conference. He said he began his press briefing with fresh condemnation on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, saying that President Putin made two big strategic mistakes. Namely, he underestimated the strength and bravery of people of Ukraine and its armed forces, and he underestimated the unity and resolve of NATO and its partners. And the NATO allies are giving unprecedented support to Ukraine, reiterating the Western alliance will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. That was NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg earlier today. But just before the meeting, Stoltenberg did say that NATO had to ensure Ukraine got the weapons it needs to win the war, and that Russian President Vladimir Putin was not prepared for peace. Instead, he's preparing for more war.
With equipment, so the Ukrainian armed forces were... Next week, we mark the first year of the terrible war in Ukraine, the full-fledged invasion by Russia against Ukraine. And we see no signs that President Putin is preparing for peace. What we see is the opposite. He is preparing for more war, for new offensives and new attacks. So it makes it just even more important that NATO allies and partners provide more support to Ukraine, and we will meet later on today in the US-led contact group for Ukraine and address the urgent needs for increased support to Ukraine. Not least the need to provide more ammunition and also how to ramp up production and strengthen our defense industry to be able to provide the necessary ammunition to Ukraine and also to replenish our own stocks.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has called on Turkey and Hungary to pave the way for Finland and Sweden to join NATO, saying she expects all NATO members to ratify their bids to join the defence alliance without delay. The accession of the two countries will strengthen the alliance as a whole, according to her. The two countries should join together, she was saying to a news conference. Now, Finland and Sweden have sought membership after Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. They say they want to join hand in hand. But while most member states have given the applications a green light, Turkey and Hungary are yet to ratify them. Well, Turkey said this month it supports Finland's application but wants Stockholm, in particular, to take a tougher line against the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which it considers a terrorist group. And the European Union and other groups blame it for a 2016 coup attempt in Turkey.
For German media and Finnish media, when we looked at the whole process of our NATO application, we formed a tripartite working group in last summer in Madrid, together with Sweden and Turkey. This working group have had two very good meetings, one in Helsinki, one in Stockholm, and we feel that we have fulfilled all those conditions that were set by Turkey, or those questions. We have been answering all those questions that Turkey has been raising to us. So we hope that this leads to very rapid ratification process and that both Finland and Sweden could be members of NATO already in the Vilnius summit, particularly in these security conditions in Europe. The conflict is not far away from us. We have seen already incidents at the Baltic Sea region and so forth. We are living in that sense a conflict region when we speak about Europe.
Well, the Kremlin says the US-led NATO military alliance demonstrates its hostility towards Russia every day and is becoming more and more involved in the conflict in Ukraine. According to the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, NATO is an organization which is hostile to us and which proves this hostility every day. It is trying its best to make its involvement in the conflicts and around Ukraine as clear as possible. Moscow said weapons supplies to Ukraine by NATO countries are dragging out the conflict and raising the possibility of a further escalation. Kyiv and the West say deliveries of advanced military hardware are crucial in helping Ukraine defend itself against Russia's offensive. President Volodymyr Zelensky, however, says diplomatic work will continue ahead of the one-year anniversary of the war in his country, saying that they're making plans with intensity with the diplomatic work of the new minimum norm for Ukraine. Ukraine Defense Contact Group will meet later today at NATO headquarters, following up on the January 20 conference at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany. It was key for the decisions to send tanks.
In the coming weeks, our diplomatic marathon will continue. Tomorrow is another meeting. We are preparing, and we are working to ensure that all our negotiations are reflected in the defense decisions of our partners, both at Ramstein and during the period before the February 24th. New bilateral negotiations and meetings are also scheduled. We are getting ready, and we are making such intensity of diplomatic work the new minimum norm for Ukraine. I thank everyone who is in the fight. I thank each of our soldiers who prevent the occupier from encircling Bakhmut, who destroys the enemy in the Volodar direction, leaving nothing from the occupier except for the burnt traces on the ground, and who hold our other principled frontline positions.
Let's talk to the VOA's Anna Chernikova. She's in Kyiv. Anna, great to see you, as always. I want to get your opinion on this NATO meeting they held in Brussels. What you're thinking about, what leaders have discussed. And NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said, accused Russia once again of what it's been doing in Ukraine, once again condemning Russia's actions in Ukraine. But that's been going on for months now, and there doesn't seem to be any change of heart with the Russian president or the Russian military forces and its mission in Ukraine.
Good evening. Well, first of all, it's important to say that Ramstein meeting number 9 definitely has a very important meaning in terms of military support. So in Ukraine, no one were expecting that this could somehow, stop war at once or make Russia change their mind. What was expected in Ukraine that new weapons would be discussed, more weapons would be discussed, and also, as Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Mr. Reznikov, announced yesterday in his report, in his social media message, basically before the meeting, that air defense would be discussed, particularly the question of aircraft. So, and of course, again, in Ukraine, no one expected to get the positive result and answer for the aircraft question, but at least Ukrainians expect that this would be under the discussion as, a future possibility. And definitely tanks question and widening of this tank coalition, developing and increasing of this tank coalition was also an important point. What we see, and this was clearly said by all the parties, all the allies, that Russia is not stopping and is not planning to stop, and Ukraine definitely as well not stopping to defend its land and liberate its land. So basically, we see that the war isn't going, and the war is getting to a very hot phase, because we see the concentration, and we have reports from Ukrainian military and international intelligence and US, particularly US officials, that Russian forces are actually intensifying their actions in the east. And definitely the city of Bakhmut is currently the hottest spot. So this Ramstein meeting was first of all about the prolongation of support and widening of the support, because as President Zelensky said previously, and all Ukrainian military officials are saying, that Ukraine needs more, especially for this very important phase, because everyone expects that spring would be very crucial in terms of the actions in the battlefield.
Anna, is Ukraine disappointed with, the response from NATO and its allies, especially as regards the weapons delivery? We know that their tanks are on their way, but then other weapons such as fighter jets and all the others that the Ukrainian president has been asking and requesting of these countries, it does seem like NATO and its allies are pretty much dragging their feet on what they can offer to Ukraine at this time, because it is crucial, isn't it, as we approach the first anniversary of the war, Russia now seeing that NATO is fighting this war by proxy?
Well, definitely aircraft question is a desirable for positive, answer for Ukrainians. And but to be honest, as I already mentioned, I cannot say that Ukrainians actually expected that, and Ukraine expected that this decision, a positive decision, would be given immediately, particularly at this Ramstein or, soon. Everyone, of course, wants to get this positive decision, and everyone understands here in Ukraine, at least everyone understands how crucial it would have been to get these aircrafts for the spring counteroffensive campaign. But at the same time, we all remember how long the negotiations about tanks took. All the allies, and definitely everyone also here in Ukraine understands that it's a very tough decision, even though, of course, Ukrainians want the decision to be taken, faster and more easy. But still, what's positive, definitely, that it's not a no. It is discussed, and who knows, how it could turn, because definitely we're not getting all the all the negotiations public, and we don't get all the decisions public. So we might wait for some, public confirmations of some, something extra or something new that might be on the table today, but still we have to wait for this, publicity of such a decision. So Ukraine is very thankful for all the help. This is for sure, because everyone again understand that this is crucial, and this is what gives Ukraine a possibility to continue the fight and the defense and liberation of the territories, as we can see from what had happened in this almost a year. Yeah, so if we look back a year ago, situation was well, pretty much different than what we see today. So definitely, you know, it's always a desire for more positive, for faster positive decisions. But still, I think that well, the war is this full-scale war is at the point when Ukraine understand that, well, unfortunately, negotiations sometimes take time, and time is crucial. But again, we will see how all this will turn.
Time is crucial, Anna, and so is hope. And Ukrainians have held on for so long. What does that feel like, holding on to hope, knowing that, you're relying on allies to help you at this point, and knowing that Russia is still planning that major offensive, especially towards the anniversary of the war itself?
Well, I think that, in this year, like during this year, Ukraine has already, get used to the fact that this is like a cooperation between allies and Ukraine, because definitely, well, unfortunately, Ukraine, has no, separate capacities to fight such country as Russia. And we all understand, I mean, the difference in terms of size and in terms of, in general, military, military behavior of both countries, because Ukraine never been to war, and Ukraine, I mean, independent Ukraine that we know from 1991. And definitely, this is not just Ukrainian war, because it's happening on the Ukrainian territory. Ukrainian people are dying, but Ukraine is standing for the values and for the common rules. Well, first of all, for the values of the European, the international, the free world values, and well, defending these values. So this is definitely this is definitely not only Ukrainian fight, and this is why, of course, the allies having their part in here in terms of supplies and help with weapons. So it's quite understandable. And we, again, looking back a year ago, if these supplies are not happening, well, the situation would have been much different. How does it feel, you asked? Well, again, I think that, I think that this kind of war, when it actually happens, because a lot of people didn't believe it could happen, in general, a lot of people other way around said that Russia would definitely continue, because the war itself started in 2014. But full-scale invasion was definitely a surprise for many, not a surprise for a lot of Ukrainians, because it was this, feeling in the air, definitely. But yeah, this kind of war is never, a war of just one nation, because this is much wider scale and bigger scale. So this cooperation, and everyone should accept it, and Ukraine, well, understand it, and people are getting used to that it's a cooperation, and this is something that, Ukraine, Ukraine gives the most important, the lives of people, and defending these values and defending the borders of Europe. And from the other side, allies help how they can.
And some of us may never truly understand, what people go through in Ukraine, haven't hear those air raid sirens go off as Russian missiles are expected to hit targets all across the country. What's the messaging from the government just to help people get through this? Because I know that it's a bit too late now for anyone who wants to evacuate, who wants to leave the country. For those who are still within Ukraine, who are still holding on, who are still, praying somehow that this whole thing ends by some miracle, what's the messaging from the government? President Zelensky has been given his address every night, almost every night since the war started. what's his message to the people of Ukraine, not just to the outside world?
Well, first of all, his message that he always starts with the wish of health and strength to Ukrainian people, basically he just saying the words of support for those who fight at the front line and for those who fight in every town, because this is a huge, like, it's a national fight, and those people who work for economy to run, those who work in different spheres like journalists, IT, retail. So all those people, like everyone, every job is a part of this, big fight and big battle. So he is supporting everyone. He is just, adding this courage to people to continue to fight. But you mentioned about evacuation from the country. I should say that at this point of war, people in Ukraine do not, look for evacuation. I mean, of course, if we talk about the city of Bakhmut, or the hottest spots of the front line, of course, people there, they have to, even though not everyone accept this and not everyone do evacuate. But in general, if we talk about like city of Kyiv, the city of Kharkiv even, which is very close to and has more shelling every day than the city of Kyiv, for example, or if we talk about central, south, east, north parts, people do not want to evacuate. People do not want to leave their homes. And at this point of war, people already at certain point get used to this war, get used to this drill. So when we hear the siren today, for example, the morning of Ukrainians started with air raid alarm across the country again at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, people just, unfortunately, I should say, get used to this, and this is just now a part of their life. But this doesn't make them want to leave the country, and this is important. And I think this is why actually Ukraine fights that successfully, because people who are fighting at the front lines, they feel the support from those who are back at home. And this is why this is definitely, this national-wide fight. And President Zelensky, he continued to repeat it all the time, and he continued to, support all these people with his, also courageous words and also updates, because he gives the latest updates in his speeches. So it just, the feeling of a huge unity of the nation, and I think this is probably the most important.
Stay strong, Anna. We're with you through this war, so is the rest of the world. Thank you again for helping us to see Ukraine the way it is and the way it can be.
Thank you so much.